Hey guys, Snortle here. Today I wanted to go through all of the recoil and spray patterns of every weapon in Apex Legends at the moment. We're in Season 4, about to go into Season 5, so most of these will stay the same, with exception maybe to the Havoc, which I think is going to get an updated spray pattern next season. But I wanted to go through these spray patterns and also talk a little bit about mouse control and show you a couple of things that I do that's definitely helped me control my guns better in fights. So first of all, big shout out to Youngblood on Reddit, who created a great graphic showing all of the guns and the counter recoil pattern. I'll put a link in the description to this thread so you can see it on Reddit. It's a really good graphic. This graphic simply shows how to counter the spray pattern of your weapons. So it's actually the upside down image of the spray pattern so that you know how to counter it or do it in reverse. So to give you an example, I'm using a Spitfire, which arguably has the worst spray pattern and recoil pattern of everything, every single gun. And I'm going to show you now. So this is without any recoil management at all. So when you look at that spray pattern and then you compare it to the graphic is actually upside down. And so what that means, if I just move over here, what that means is that you would actually do the reverse of this pattern to counter the way the recoil happens. So if I followed the actual guide, I would be pulling down to the right, then a little to the left, a little to the right, and then diagonally down to the left, diagonally down to the right, and then diagonally down to the left. So that's a really messy spray pattern, and it's probably the hardest to learn on a Spitfire. So one of the reasons why I like this 3x scope on the Spitfire is for mid-range fights. I don't worry so much about this difficult spray pattern. Instead, because of the bullet fire rate on the Spitfire, I look at the reticle in the center of the screen and I just counter that with my own movements. So I'll show you what I mean. So as far as actually controlling the Spitfire there, I was countering this movement instead of trying to do the exact reverse of this, which is extremely hard to do. I use this sight to actually give me a better understanding of where the gun was moving, and then I would just counter it with my mouse movements. If I look at the flatline as an example, I'll often also use a 2x or even a 3x scope, especially if I'm using an R99 or a shotgun, like a Peacekeeper. Generally on the flatline, I'll use the 3x scope as well for those longer range fights. My eyesight's probably not as good as most other players. But even on the 2x, you can see I'm just going to do no recoil at all. Or no counters with my mouse, I should say. And you can see this pattern. The gun goes up and then switches, or up to the left, and then switches across to the right, then up to the left, and then up to the right. So again, to counter that, you can look at the recoil pattern guide that Youngblood has shared. And actually what you would do is you would pull down slightly to the right, then flick to the left, flick to the right, pull down to the right, and then pull down to the left. So again, that can work. But if you use a 2 or 3x scope, you can generally counter this just with mouse control. So again, you can see, although it's not perfect, I'm not hitting in exactly the same spot. If that was actually a player body or a head, more often than not, I'm hitting than missing. So it gives me better recoil control than trying to follow these difficult recoil patterns by use of the sights, the 2 and 3x. So what I would suggest, if you're going to go through and use any of these weapons with any regularity, is that you maybe pick out your 2 favorite weapons and you learn the recoil patterns of those weapons and how to counter those. And then you play with some of the sights as well to help you, especially if you know that you're often in this sort of distance fighting or a little bit longer, you'll know which way you'll best control it, either by memory of learning the pattern or by using the sight or your chosen sight. Okay, so I'm going to switch now to the R99, which is definitely one of my favorite weapons. With this R99, here's the spray pattern here. As you can see, that jumps up really quickly. And then at the top, it gives a little bit of a spray. So what you want to be doing is you really want to be countering that initial quick jump as quickly as possible by squeezing downwards as you're firing. And when I say squeezing, I'm going to show you my mouse control, which I know a lot of people don't do, but all the really good players in Apex or any first-person shooter do. But I'm just going to show you for my own recoil control. It's probably not the greatest. I did let it slip up a little bit. But again, that you're pulling downward quite quickly when you first fire. The other thing to keep in mind too with some of these weapons, like the R99 is a good example. As you go, it's a pretty much a straight upward recoil with a little bit spraying out to the right, so you counter that by pulling down and to the left as that sprays. But at the end, it goes a little bit haywire. So this is where, using an R99, you may want to do those shorter bursts where you're pulling down and just not getting to that crazy spot up the top where it goes a little bit out of control. So instead, try burst firing, which actually for a gun like the Prowler is often a really good choice. Taking a look at the Havoc as an example, this is one of the reasons why this gun's probably going to get nerfed. The 32 shots in the early game, if you pick up this weapon, it's a little overpowered, so I'm not sure how they're going to nerf this in Season 5, but again, if you look at this recoil, it's literally straight up. So to manage the recoil for this gun, you are just going to pull down. And it gives you a lot more control, and as you can see, just by pulling it pretty much straight down, you don't need to worry too much about left and right. Just pulling it straight down will give you enough recoil control to hit your targets accurately. So again, for this, I'm not going to go through every single weapon. Youngblood's chart and graphic can actually show you all the different recoil patterns. Jump into the firing range. Now, remember to turn on or change your graphics settings so that your impact marks are set to high, and then that way as you're in here you'll see these marks. Often if you're playing in a game, I turn those impact marks right off and you don't see these patterns. But if you want to practice, remember, go into your settings, turn this impact marks to high, and you'll see these impact marks as you're in the firing range. Okay, so I also wanted to show you some mouse control, because some people get confused, especially if they're new to a first-person shooter or haven't been playing that long, how to actually control the mouse a little bit better to give you control over your recoil. So if you can see, I use a wireless mouse. I'm not restricted by the cord or anything like that. But when you're actually trying to counter the recoil, if you're trying to use your whole mouse pad like this, and you're just moving the mouse like this, where you're maybe planting your elbow on the table and then moving your mouse like that, it's a lot harder to control. So generally in gunfights, what I recommend is when you grip your mouse, you're holding it like this and you're planting the actual heel of your palm on the actual pad. And then when you counter this, the recoil, when you're pulling down, you're actually using these two fingers and your thumb to pull your mouse down like this, as opposed to trying to use your whole arm to move the mouse down. So also one thing to consider, and the way that this has helped me a lot, especially with weapons like the R99 that has this massive kick, is that when I fire, I tend to squeeze. Like I get this squeeze feeling in my hand. So what I'm doing is I'm actually squeezing the mouse towards me as I'm firing. So I'll show you what I mean. As I'm firing, this is an alternator. It's got one of the long sprays and it's slower. So hopefully you'll be able to see this. But as I'm shooting, I'm just squeezing the mouse down. I'm not actually moving my hand. I've planted the base, and as I'm shooting, I'm just squeezing down. That was a bit of an upkick there. I didn't react fast enough. So let me try that again. I just squeeze down with the mouse, and then that way the squeeze helps control the recoil, as you can see there, without me trying to do it with my full arm, which is just a lot more difficult to control if I'm raising my hand off the mouse pad. So maybe give that a try as well with your mouse, and I think you'll find that you're able to control the spray patterns a lot easier if you actually plant your wrist and you generally work on a squeeze rather than a drag. So I hope this video has helped you with your recoil patterns and spray patterns of all the guns in Apex Legends. Big shout out again to Youngblood. I'm going to put the link in the description below. Thanks again for watching. If you like this video, please leave me a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this for Apex Legends. Cheers, and I'll see you in the next video.